the fire beneath the silence. Before a man can rise, he must first become still. Before he can become strong, he must first confront the illusions of weakness masquerading as comfort. And before he can find clarity, he must walk through the fog he has lived in for too long, the fog of distraction, complaint, envy, and noise. We live in an age where attention is currency, noise is constant, and peace is a forgotten luxury. The average man is bombarded with demands from society, from technology, from unexamined desires, and from the unrelenting whisper of ego. He scrolls endlessly, speaks thoughtlessly, reacts impulsively, and yet wonders why he feels hollow, anxious, and uncertain. This is not a modern problem. It is a human one. And over 2,000 years ago, a group of men, warriors, emperors, philosophers, gathered in their own chaotic times to master the one battlefield that mattered, the mind. Their names still echo: Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, Musonius Rufus. They were not removed from life. They were in the thick of it. Marcus ruled the most powerful empire in the world while plagued by war and death. Seneca advised emperors, battled illness, and faced exile. Epictetus was born a slave. Yet, from within fire, they forged steel. From chaos, they cultivated serenity. And from power, they chose discipline. Their mission was not escape. It was transcendence. They understood that peace is not found in retreating from life. It is found in mastering your response to it. Stillness is not the absence of motion. It is motion directed by wisdom. Clarity is not the lack of confusion. It is seeing through it with a disciplined gaze. Strength is not brute force. It is the refusal to be moved by what does not matter. And so, we begin this colossal journey, not into Stoicism as a dry philosophy, but as a living, breathing, warrior's path. The 15 things that follow are not small tweaks. They are dismantlings. They are the heavy, necessary removals of the things that suffocate your potential, cloud your perception, and weaken your soul. This is not a list. This is a cleansing. And if you're ready to see just how much lies on the other side of stillness, walk with me now. Let us begin. 1. Constant complaining. The drain of self-pity and the death of perspective. There is a subtle poison that drips quietly into the soul. It does not scream. It does not shake the earth. But it corrodes. It weakens. It turns strong men into bitter shadows of what they once could have been. That poison is complaint. The Stoics warned against it not because life is easy, but precisely because it is not. Marcus Aurelius, seated at the helm of an empire, did not write to boast of his power, but to remind himself daily of how to endure the pain of war, betrayal, sickness, and loss, without collapsing into self-pity. He knew what many forget. To complain endlessly is to rehearse your suffering and deepen your wounds. It is to forget your power and amplify your helplessness. When you complain constantly, you train your mind to focus on the flaw in every frame, the crack in every structure, the stain in every moment. Over time, you are no longer simply reacting to life. You are interpreting all of it through a lens of frustration, entitlement, and victimhood. You are building a worldview that says, life should be easier than this, instead of asking, how can I become stronger than this? And that question, that shift, is everything. Epictetus, once a slave who had every reason to complain, taught that suffering is not what happens to you. Suffering is your judgment of what happens to you. The event is neutral. The mind is not. This is where power lies, not in controlling the world, but in mastering your perception of it. You must begin to see complaining not as a harmless vent, but as a dangerous leak. Every time you complain, you hand over your agency. You become less of a creator and more of a critic. You lose the chance to respond with strength because you've already decided to collapse into resentment. You are no longer the sculptor of your life, but merely its commentator. Bitter, restless, and loud. The Stoic does not deny pain. He faces it, but he refuses to be defined by it. He endures, yes, but more importantly, he extracts value from every difficulty. He asks, what is this moment trying to teach me? rather than shouting, "Why me?" Complaining is easy. Anyone can do it. It takes no discipline, no wisdom, no courage. What takes strength is restraint. What takes clarity is the ability to observe the hardship, accept its presence, and choose a higher path. Next time the urge to complain arises, pause. Breathe. Ask, is this within my control? If it is, act. If it isn't, let go. That single practice will give you more peace than a lifetime of venting ever could. The world is not changed by those who endlessly point out its faults. It is changed by those who quietly choose to be better than their circumstances. The Stoics did not seek perfect lives. They sought mastery within imperfect ones. And to master life, you must silence the habit that keeps you small, weak, and reactive. Let go of complaint. Trade it for calm observation. Trade it for deliberate action. Trade it for strength. Because the man who stops complaining is not the man who suffers less. He is the man who suffers well. 2. Comparing yourself to others. The silent war that devours inner peace. There is a quiet suffering that eats away at men from the inside out. It wears no visible chains. It draws no blood. Yet it wounds deeper than betrayal, lasts longer than failure, and weakens more than any storm. It is the suffering of comparison. The Stoics understood the destructive weight of measuring oneself against others. They knew that nothing distorts a man's vision more than turning his gaze away from his own path and fixating it on the footsteps of another. When you compare, you leave the present moment. You abandon your journey. You desecrate your own progress by judging it through someone else's timeline. Seneca wrote, "No man is crushed by misfortune unless he has first been deceived by prosperity." What he meant was simple. Envy and comparison often come not from lack, but from illusion, the illusion that others are thriving while you are falling behind. You see their success, their joy, their victories, but not their pain, not their doubts, not their years in the dark. You compare your behind the scenes to their highlight reel, and in doing so, you poison your own peace. The tragedy is not that others succeed. The tragedy is that you think their success somehow subtracts from yours. Stoicism teaches that there is only one person you must overcome, the man you were yesterday. You are not here to walk someone else's path, imitate someone else's voice, or mirror someone else's image. You are here to unfold your potential, not their purpose, but your own. Each soul is carved by different fires, called to different mountains, broken by different trials. Comparison assumes equality of struggle. But life does not work that way. The terrain is different for every man. Some are born with riches, others into storms. Some are tested by external war, others by internal demons. You cannot compare journeys when the destinations, burdens, and wins are not the same. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, in the privacy of his journal, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. The message is clear. Stop measuring. Start becoming. Stop calculating your worth by the metrics of the crowd and start building your character from the inside out. What if, instead of comparing, you admired? What if, instead of envying, you learned? What if, instead of competing, you focused on completing yourself? Comparison kills joy. But beyond that, it kills clarity. It creates a false benchmark for success, one that is external, fleeting, and completely outside your control. The Stoics see success not in titles or applause, but in virtue, in courage, wisdom, self-discipline, and justice. These are the only things that cannot be taken from you. These are the only things worth competing for. When you stop comparing, you begin to see. You see your strengths. You see your growth. You see how far you've come and how much still lies ahead. And in that clarity, you find power, not over others, but over yourself. Do not waste your life running races that were never yours to begin with. Do not climb ladders leaning against someone else's wall. Build your own structure. Blaze your own trail. And when you look back, let it be not with regret, but with the quiet strength of a man who lived by his own code. Let comparison die, because when it does, peace is born. 3. Seeking everyone's approval, the surrender of soul for applause. There is no prison more invisible, No slavery more widespread than the compulsion to be liked. To shape your behavior so others nod in agreement. To speak not your truth, but what you believe will earn you praise. To silence your instincts, shrink your spirit, and betray your values just to avoid disapproval. This is the quiet tragedy of approval seeking. And the Stoics, with all their calm, all their steel, all their grounded wisdom, warned against it at every turn. Epictetus once asked, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because the moment you start changing who you are to please others, you no longer live a life. You perform one. Your days become theater. Your words become rehearsed lines. Your decisions become audience-driven. And your soul, once a compass, becomes a mirror, reflecting what others want, rather than directing what you need. The desire for approval is natural, but living for it, that is fatal. Fatal to freedom. Fatal to authenticity. Fatal to peace. Approval is a moving target. What pleases one person offends another. What earns applause today may earn scorn tomorrow. And the more people you try to please, the more fragmented you become, torn between masks, between expectations, between lies. The Stoics urged men to build an inner fortress, one so strong that neither flattery nor condemnation could shake it. They taught that true peace is not found in how others see you, but in how you see yourself. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by power and public scrutiny, reminded himself, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." He knew the absurdity of it, loving your own life, yet handing it over to the judgment of others. Building your world, only to let strangers dictate its shape. When you live for approval, you trade truth for applause. You abandon your direction for their validation. You become a servant to shifting moods, rather than a steward of unshakable values. But when you drop the need to be liked, truly drop it, something powerful happens. You become whole. You begin to act not from fear, but from principle. You begin to speak not to be heard, but to be honest. You begin to walk not for recognition, but for purpose. This is not rebellion. This is liberation. You are no longer performing. You are living. Understand this. People's opinions are not stable. They are projections of their fears, their hopes, their programming, their wounds. If you tether your worth to something so unstable, you will forever be tossed around by the winds of public opinion. Seneca advised, "What is truly beautiful needs no adornment." You don't need their approval to be worthy. You don't need their applause to walk your path. All you need is alignment between what you believe and how you live, detached from the addiction to be liked. Let your conscience, not the crowd, be your guide. Because in a world that applauds masks, the man who dares to be real is already rare and already free. Live by principle, not performance. Seek respect from within, not validation from without. And never forget, the greatest approval you'll ever receive is the one that comes from a clear conscience, a quiet soul, and a life lived true. For fear of failure, the phantom that paralyzes growth. Failure. Even the word sends shivers through the spine of the modern man. It's not death we fear most, it's disgrace. Not the pain of defeat, but the eyes watching when we fall. The judgment, the laughter, the shame. But what if we've been lied to? What if failure isn't the enemy? What if it's the forge? The Stoics did not flinch at failure. They did not run from it, deny it, or fear it. They met it face to face, understood its role, and turned it into strength. They saw failure not as a dead end but as a furnace, one that melts away illusion and weakness, leaving only truth, grit, and character behind. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." What he meant was this: the man who never fails is the man who never dares. A life without failure is not a life of success. It is a life of avoidance, a life untouched by challenge, a life untested and ultimately unlived. Failure isn't a sign of weakness. It's the evidence that you stepped into the arena, that you had the courage to move when others stood still, that you were willing to try, to risk, to expose yourself to the brutal lessons only experience can teach. The Stoic understands this. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. In other words, failure doesn't block your path. It is your path. It's not a detour. It's the necessary road to growth, to mastery, to self-knowledge. Modern culture worships success. It celebrates the polished, the filtered, the flawless. But Stoicism cuts deeper. It honors the man who endures loss and still moves forward, who is broken but unbowed, who falls 1,000 times and rises with cleaner eyes, clearer intention, and deeper wisdom. Failure strips away pride. It humbles you. It reveals what you do not yet know, what you must still become. It invites you to grow, not in image, but in substance, not in appearance, but in endurance. The fear of failure, however, does something worse than failing itself. It paralyzes. It makes a man shrink, hesitate, delay. It convinces him to wait for the perfect time, the perfect plan, the perfect safety net. But perfection is a ghost. It never arrives. And in waiting to avoid failure, life passes by. What is the cost of never failing? Never creating, never building, never changing, never living fully. You must understand, failure does not break the Stoic. It builds him. Each setback is a trial by fire, and fire does not destroy the iron. It tempers it. It gives it edge. It makes it unbreakable. Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That doing? That have to do? It includes the risk of falling flat. It includes the possibility of rejection, mistakes, embarrassment. But do it anyway. Because the worst kind of failure is not to fall. It's to remain untouched by life. To let fear dictate your future. To look back and see not wounds, but emptiness. True strength is not in succeeding every time. It is in daring when success is uncertain. In standing up after the collapse. In continuing forward even when the outcome is unknown. If you wish to become unshakable, embrace failure. If you wish to find wisdom, walk through defeat. If you wish to taste real peace, stop fearing what may go wrong and start focusing on what must be done. Do not fear failure. Fear the version of yourself that never tried. 5. Holding grudges. The poison you drink hoping others will suffer. A grudge is not just a memory. It is a weight, chained to your spirit, pulling you backward while life moves forward. It is an echo, a wound that keeps speaking not to teach but to torment. And it is a poison, one you sip daily, thinking it somehow punishes the one who wronged you, when in truth, it only sickens your own soul. The Stoics understood the power of forgiveness, not as a favor to others, but as a liberation of the self. Because to hold a grudge is to remain shackled to the offense, to keep reliving the pain, rehearsing the bitterness, and revisiting the insult long after the moment has passed. You think you are punishing the other, but they've moved on, or they never cared, or they've forgotten. Yet you, the wounded, carry the fire. Every time you think of them, you burn. Every time you speak of it, you reopen the scar. Every time you choose resentment, you extend the life of the moment that hurt you. And the Stoic asks for what? Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. In other words, to meet harm with harm is to become what you despise. To carry hate is to internalize it. To let another's wrongdoing twist your peace, distort your emotions, control your mental clarity, that is to hand over your mind on a silver platter. True power is indifference. Not the indifference of apathy, but of transcendence, the ability to rise above, to no longer be defined by the offense, to no longer be bound to the person who delivered it. To forgive does not mean to approve. It does not mean to forget. It means to reclaim the energy once wasted on reliving the injury. It means to close the book, not because the story didn't matter, but because you're done rereading it. It means to let go, not for them, but for you. Seneca, in his letters, made it clear, how much better to heal a wrong than to avenge one. He understood that to choose peace over payback is not weakness. It is spiritual strength. It is sovereignty over your own emotions. It is refusal to let pain dictate your path. Because grudges are more than emotional burdens. They're spiritual delays. You cannot move forward while dragging the corpses of your past behind you. You cannot grow while carrying the rod of resentment in your chest. And you cannot cultivate inner stillness, that sacred Stoic stillness, while inner storms rage because someone else failed to act with honor. The wise man does not need an apology to forgive. He does not require the other to be remorseful, because forgiveness is not a transaction. It is a declaration. I will no longer suffer for what someone else did. I will no longer bleed from wounds that are no longer fresh. I will no longer let ghosts command my future. Let them go, not because they deserve peace, but because you do. Grudges are heavy, and life is already heavy enough. Drop the stones you've carried. Mourn the betrayal. Learn from it. Then move forward, lighter, freer, and more alive. As the Stoics would say, what has been done cannot be undone. But how you carry it, that is within your power. And you, my friend, were never born to carry chains. You were born to rise. 6. Fear of the future. Suffering overshadows that haven't happened. There is a kind of quiet panic that grips the modern man. A low, constant hum of dread in the background of his days. A whisper that says, what if it all falls apart? What if I lose what I have? What if tomorrow brings disaster? And so we live, not in the present, but in the shadow of futures that have not happened. We live beneath imagined catastrophes, and it exhausts us. This fear of the future, this compulsive worrying about what might go wrong, is perhaps the most subtle thief of peace, energy, and inner clarity. And the Stoics knew it well. They called it premeditatio malorum, the anticipation of adversity. But they didn't use it to panic. They used it to prepare, to build mental resilience, to remind themselves of what they could control and what they never could. Seneca said it clearly. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. And you know this is true. Think of how many hours you've wasted, replaying what might happen, spiraling into fears of loss, rejection, failure, death. You imagine the conversation going badly. You envisioned the worst outcome. You told yourself a story of doom. And none of it happened. Yet your body paid the price. Your mind collapsed under stress that never needed to exist. Why? Because fear of the future is a projection, a misuse of one of your greatest gifts, imagination. Instead of using it to build a better life, you use it to build prisons. You use it to construct invisible cages made of what-ifs. You overthink. You overanalyze. You try to outguess reality. But life isn't interested in your forecasts. It arrives without warning. It brings storms and sunlight alike. And your job, your only job, is to be grounded enough in the present to meet it with strength, clarity, and inner steadiness. This is why the Stoics trained themselves to live now. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present." This is the essence of Stoicism. You do not need to solve tomorrow. You need to master today. You do not need to be certain of every outcome. You need to become someone who can endure any outcome. Worrying about the future does not protect you. It drains you. It builds nothing. It solves nothing. And the brutal irony is this. The very fear that is meant to keep you safe weakens you for the moment when real danger actually arrives. You've already spent your strength on ghosts. So what can you do? Accept that the future is not yours. It never was. Accept that what comes will come, and it will come as it pleases, not as you fear. Your power is this moment. Your power is in preparation, not prediction. In action, not anxiety. In clarity, not catastrophizing. You prepare by strengthening your character. You endure by mastering your mind. You lead by standing rooted in this moment, not blown around by imagined storms. The future belongs to no one. So fear it less, and live now, deeply, fully, fiercely. That is the Stoics' way. 7. Clinging to the past, the shackles of yesterday's ghosts. What's done is done. But how often do we live as though it's not? How often do we re-enter the past, not as students of its lessons, but as prisoners of its wounds. We replay old conversations. We relive heartbreaks. We rehearse betrayals. We kneel at the grave of who we used to be, mourning the things we cannot change, resurrecting the pain we once endured, asking questions the past will never answer. And in doing so, we miss life itself. The Stoics were clear. You cannot touch the past. You cannot bend it. You cannot bargain with it, repair it, or relive it. The past is a statue, carved in stone, unmoving. And yet we stand before it daily, wishing it would come to life, to make different choices, to speak softer words, to give us closure. But it never does, and it never will. So we suffer, not because the past still exists, but because we refuse to let it go. We cling to who we were. We cling to what was lost. We clutch regret like a talisman, thinking that if we hold it tightly enough, we'll finally feel peace. But regret is not a compass. It points nowhere. It only circles. Marcus Aurelius, writing amidst war, death, and relentless uncertainty, reminds us, past and future have no power over you. Only the present moment is real, and even that is slipping by. His point was not just philosophical, it was survival. Because life is not a place you revisit. It's a fire you walk through, one step at a time, each moment disappearing behind you as fast as it arrives. The man who cannot release the past cannot walk forward. He drags it like a corpse, heavy, cold, and lifeless, slowing every step. The Stoics taught that suffering comes not from what happened, but from our refusal to accept what happened. Seneca put it clearly, "What need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears." Life is not gentle. It bruises all of us. And yet, we must go on. Because the point is not to be unscarred. It is to rise scarred and still steady. You don't heal by rewriting the past. You heal by rewiring your relationship to it. You use your pain as instruction. You use your mistakes as sharpening stones. You remember that everything you regret, everything you wish had not happened, has brought you to this moment. And this moment is yours. Entirely. So stop grieving the roads you didn't take. They're gone. Stop arguing with memories. They cannot hear you. Stop living in the museum of your former life, staring at dusty exhibits of moments that are no longer alive. There is no clarity in yesterday. There is no strength in turning backward. The Stoics chose to live now, fully engaged, undistracted by the smoke of what once was. They walked forward into hardship, uncertainty, and fate, not with regret, but with readiness. That is the way.
You are not what happened to you.
You are what you choose to become in spite of it.
So mourn, yes.
But then rise. Carry the lesson, not the weight. Carry the wisdom, not the wound. Let the past be a page, not a prison. The present is your battlefield now, and peace waits ahead, never behind. 8. Talking too much, the noise that drowns your soul. The mouth is easy to open, but difficult to master. Most people speak not to communicate, but to escape themselves, filling the space with sound so they don't have to feel what lives in the silence. But the Stoics, in their brutal honesty and piercing insight, knew something modern society has forgotten. Talking too much is a weakness, not a strength. It is often a sign of a chaotic inner world, of someone trying to be heard because they do not hear themselves. Words, when overused, become noise. And noise is the enemy of stillness. In a world addicted to commentary, the Stoics chose contemplation. While others shouted to be noticed, they remained quiet to observe. Epictetus warned, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we may listen twice as much as we speak." He wasn't just talking about etiquette, he was teaching discipline. Because silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of power. When you speak, your energy flows outward. When you remain silent, your energy pools inward, sharpening, strengthening, deepening. Talking too much scatters your force. It broadcasts your thoughts before they've matured. It invites others to poke holes in your intentions before they've solidified. Worse, it leaves no room for growth. You cannot learn while you're speaking. You cannot understand when you're performing. You cannot reflect when you're narrating. And you cannot hear your own soul when your mouth won't shut long enough to listen. There is a kind of man who is feared, not because he shouts, but because he watches. He listens more than he speaks. He weighs his words like gold. He allows silence to work in his favor. This is a Stoic. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire and had the power to command legions with his voice, wrote almost exclusively to himself. He wasn't obsessed with being heard by the crowd. He was obsessed with understanding himself, governing his mind, sharpening his reason. His meditations were whispers to the soul, not broadcasts to the world.
Why?
Because real power is silent. Real presence needs no commentary. And wisdom is often wrapped in quiet, waiting to be uncovered by those who are willing to shut up long enough to notice it. When you talk too much, you reveal your fears, your insecurities, your attachments. You speak defensively. You overexplain. You seek validation. You try to manage how others perceive you. But when you are content with who you are, when you are secure in your principles, when you trust your own soul, silence becomes easy. Stillness becomes natural. And your words, when they finally do come, carry weight. They land like stone, not because they're loud, but because they're rare.
So speak less. Say only what must be said.
Let your actions speak in your place. Let your silence make others wonder what you're thinking. Let your restraint build presence. There is a certain strength in knowing when not to speak. A man who talks less is underestimated. A man who listens more becomes dangerous. Because while others are busy broadcasting noise, you are harvesting insight. While others are reacting, you are strategizing. While others are explaining, you are evolving.
Talk less. Think deeply.
Hold your tongue until your mind is clear. And let your silence be the weapon your ego cannot touch. 9. Focusing on external things. The illusion of control. The death of peace. A man can conquer cities and still be a slave. He can possess wealth, beauty, and admiration, and yet tremble with fear, crippled by the thought of losing them.
Why?
Because he has placed his identity, his peace, his power, into things the world can take away. And the Stoics warned us, that is the root of all suffering. To base your happiness on anything outside yourself is to build your home on sand, beautiful for a moment, but helpless when the storm comes. And the storm always comes. The Stoics had a word for this kind of blindness: attachment. Attachment to praise. Attachment to possessions. Attachment to status. Attachment to being liked, respected, seen. And they reminded us, over and over, none of it is yours. The money in your account? It can vanish. The body you sculpt? Time will reshape it. The reputation you guard? It can be shattered by rumor. The relationship you worship? It can dissolve in a moment. You own none of it. You are only renting. And when you worship what you rent, you will fear the landlord, life itself. Marcus Aurelius, a man surrounded by luxury and power, knew this truth better than anyone. He wrote, "Receive without pride. Let go without attachment, because the only thing that belongs to you, truly, undeniably, is your mind, your thoughts, your decisions, your values, your ability to choose your attitude, your response, your direction. Everything else is fleeting, and therefore, should never hold your peace hostage." Most people don't realize this until it's too late. They spend their lives chasing the next promotion, the next compliment, the next indulgence, like a man drinking seawater, dying of thirst. The more he drinks, the thirstier he becomes. It never ends, because no amount of external achievement can fill the void left by an undisciplined soul. Seneca warned us, "It is not the man who is little who is poor, but the one who constantly wants more." You are not poor because you lack what others have. You are poor if you believe you need what others have to be whole. This is why the Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort, sleeping on the floor, eating simple meals, going without, to remind themselves that nothing the world offers is necessary for peace. They made themselves immune by letting go in advance. It wasn't deprivation. It was freedom. Because when you stop needing the external, When you stop chasing what you cannot keep, you gain something no one can take. Power. The power to walk away. The power to lose without crumbling. The power to live lightly, move freely, think clearly. You're no longer owned by your job, your image, your applause. You can enjoy success without being shackled to it. You can love without clinging. You can strive without begging. Because you are rooted in something deeper, something the Stoics prized above all. Inner stability. This is what makes a man dangerous in a world obsessed with display. He is not rattled when he's insulted. He is not inflated when he's praised. He is not shattered when he loses what others would die to protect. He simply adjusts calmly, deliberately, and keeps walking. So, let the world decorate itself with glitter. Let others fight for crowns made of smoke. You have something more precious. A soul that does not bow. A mind that is unshaken. A peace that is built not on what you have, but on who you have chosen to become. That is what the Stoics taught us. To stand tall, not because the wind isn't blowing, but because our roots are too deep to be moved. Let the world do what it will. You are not the weather. You are the mountain. 10. Being emotionally reactive. How to stop being a puppet pulled by feeling. A man who cannot control his emotions is a man who cannot be trusted by others, by fate, or by himself. He is a puppet, pulled by invisible strings, dancing not to the rhythm of reason, but to the chaos of impulse. And in the Stoic world, there is no greater weakness than this. To be ruled by something you should command. Anger,
envy, fear,
resentment,
despair.
These are not enemies that attack from without. They rise from within, and they conquer the undisciplined soul. Seneca put it plainly, the greatest empire is to rule over oneself. And yet most people never even try. They feel something, and they act on it. They get insulted and retaliate. They feel afraid, and they run. They get jealous and sabotage. They feel angry and destroy everything they love.
Why?
Because they believe emotions are truth. But the Stoics taught us this brutal, liberating truth. Emotions are not facts. They are not commands. They are not orders. They are messengers. And if you are wise, you will listen to the message and then decide what to do. To react is animal. To respond is human. To master your emotions is divine. Marcus Aurelius, who faced betrayal, death, war, and plague, and still governed with reason, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Notice what he said. Power over your mind. Not your anger, not your fear, not your sadness. Your mind. The mind must be the commander. Because when the mind is weak, emotions take over. But when the mind is trained, emotions become tools. A Stoic does not suppress emotions. That is a misunderstanding. He observes them. He questions them. He pauses before reacting. He separates the signal from the noise. The Stoic feels everything deeply, but is enslaved by nothing. He can feel anger without becoming violent. He can feel grief without collapsing. He can feel fear without abandoning duty. He doesn't shove the emotion down. He steps back and asks, is this feeling true? Is this reaction helpful? Will this lead me closer to virtue or further from it? Because to be Stoic is not to be cold. It is to be clear. Clarity does not come from impulse. Clarity comes from discipline. Discipline of thought. Discipline of speech. Discipline of action. This is the secret weapon of a strong man, the invisible armor that allows him to remain unmoved when chaos erupts. It's not that he doesn't feel. It's that he refuses to be controlled by the first wave of feeling. He knows that between stimulus and response lies a sacred space. And in that space, character is built. Destiny is shaped. Peace is preserved. The reactive man burns bridges. The Stoic builds them, even while on fire. The reactive man starts wars. The Stoic diffuses them with composure and clarity. The reactive man is triggered by anything. The Stoic chooses his triggers carefully and is triggered by almost nothing. So when emotion rises, the Stoic does not flee it. He does not indulge it. He does not perform it for an audience. He watches it, like a wave rolling toward shore. He feels it, but he does not become it. And when it passes, as all emotions do, he acts with reason, not reactivity. That is not weakness. That is supreme strength. To feel a storm within and still speak with calm. To rage internally and still choose kindness. To ache with sadness and still do what must be done. That is what separates the average from the excellent, the immature from the indomitable. So the next time anger flares, pause. The next time fear tightens its grip, breathe. The next time jealousy whispers, remain still. Because every time you choose restraint over reaction, you reclaim a piece of your power. And soon, you are no longer the puppet. You are the master of yourself. And the world bows, not to your force, but to your unshakable center. 11. Seeking revenge. The poison chalice of retaliation and the Stoic reclamation of power. Revenge may taste sweet for a moment, but it poisons the soul for a lifetime. It is the illusion of strength, when in truth, it is the scream of a wounded ego, desperate to feel powerful again. But the Stoics taught us, you don't heal by hurting. You don't become whole by breaking someone else. You don't gain peace by dragging another soul into your suffering. You gain peace by stepping out of the game entirely. Marcus Aurelius said it with clarity. The best revenge is not to be like your enemy, because to seek revenge is to become them,
To think like them.
to act like them, to carry their darkness in your hands, to let their actions determine yours. Is that power?
No.
That is slavery. That is letting your enemy live in your mind rent-free, controlling your thoughts, steering your behavior, dictating your mood. That is letting the man who struck you continue to harm you, not with his hands anymore, but with your obsession. The Stoics viewed this as one of the most tragic forms of self-betrayal, to surrender your tranquility to the memory of an offense.
Think about it.
They already hurt you once. Why let them keep doing it every day in your imagination? Seneca wrote, "He who returns a wrong has already been wronged." The Stoic refuses to be drawn into that loop. He does not waste his energy plotting. He does not fantasize about showing them. He does not twist his mind around vengeance. Instead, he lets it go, not because he's weak, but because he's strong enough to live free. To let go of revenge is not to forget. It is not to excuse. It is not to pretend nothing happened. It is to say, I will not allow this pain to define me. I will not allow your behavior to pull me from my path. I reclaim my energy, my focus, my dignity, and I move forward untouched. That is indifference, one of the Stoics' sharpest weapons. And make no mistake, indifference is not apathy. It is supreme control. It is choosing to be unmoved by small men doing small things. It is refusing to dance to the tune of insult and offense. It is rising above not because you're afraid to fight, but because you've already won by walking away. The moment you seek revenge, you lose the higher ground. You sink into their level. You trade peace for pride. And you burn your own house down to hurt someone standing outside it. But the Stoic? The Stoic builds a fortress of character instead. He channels that energy into excellence. He responds to insult with improvement. He meets betrayal with clarity and calm detachment. He lets results, not revenge, speak for him. Because the Stoic knows, the most powerful thing you can ever do is not react. Not because you didn't feel it, but because you are not controlled by what you feel. This is what separates the man ruled by ego from the man ruled by wisdom. The first is constantly wounded, reactive, triggered, inflamed. The second, he may bleed, but he does not flinch. He may feel fury rise, but he lets it pass like a wave and remains still. He takes the pain and forges something greater from it. Let others fight their petty wars. Let them shout, insult, undermine, betray. You walk forward, composed, calm, and untouched. Because vengeance is a noisy fire, but indifference is a quiet, burning sun. Untouchable, unstoppable, eternal. And when you master that flame, no one can control you, not even your enemies. 12. Worrying about what you can't control. The endless war against reality. Worry is the illusion of action. It is effort with no effect. It is the mind running in circles, exhausting itself, and going nowhere. Worry is trying to fix the rain, trying to rearrange the wind, trying to make the past unhappen and the future obey your fear. It is a war, but one you cannot win, because it is a war against reality itself. And the Stoics knew that is madness. Epictetus said it with brutal simplicity. Some things are up to us, and some things are not. And in that sentence is the foundation of inner peace. Everything in your life, every problem, every fear, every frustration, can be sorted into those two boxes. Box 1, what I can control. Box 2, what I cannot. Your thoughts, your actions, your beliefs, your words, your choices, your attitude. Box 1, the weather, other people's opinions, whether she calls you back, whether they betray you, the outcome of the meeting, the twists of fate and the chaos of life. Box 2, and here's the truth. All your suffering comes from trying to control box 2. All your anxiety, all your overthinking, all your sleepless nights and tight chests and clenched jaws, all your mental spirals, they don't come from the thing itself. They come from your refusal to accept what you can't change. The Stoics didn't teach blind optimism. They didn't say, don't worry, everything will be fine. They said, worry is wasted energy. Direct your energy toward what's yours. What is yours? Your response, your effort, your discipline, your clarity, your virtue. That is where peace begins. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, faced wars, betrayal, plagues, the death of children, and still wrote in his journal, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength.
Think about that.
He was emperor of Rome, and yet the only kingdom he tried to conquer was his own soul. Because the wise man knows, you may not control the storm, but you control the captain of the ship. The Stoic doesn't beg life to go his way. He prepares himself to face life as it is. Because the more you try to control the uncontrollable, the more you suffer. But when you release it, when you draw that sacred line and say, this is not mine and I will no longer carry it, you reclaim your mind. You stop playing God and you start becoming human again. You stop clenching your fist and open your hand to whatever comes. Not in weakness, but in supreme composure. That's what the Stoics practiced every day. Not apathy, not laziness, not giving up, but laser focus on what was theirs and full surrender of what wasn't. You can control how you speak, not what they hear. You can control your effort, not the outcome. You can control your intention, not how they respond. You can control how you live, not how long you live. The result? Freedom, a peace that cannot be shaken. Because the man who knows what is his is unshakable in the face of what isn't. This is the Stoic paradox. The moment you let go of control, you gain it. You gain control over the only thing that ever mattered, yourself. So next time you find your mind spiraling, will it work? What if she doesn't respond? What if I fail? What if they betray me again?
Pause. Ask.
Is this within my control? If yes, take calm, decisive action. If no, let it go like a stone dropped into a river. Because no amount of worry will change the tide. But clarity will teach you how to swim. And one day, you'll look back and realize you never needed control of the world. You only needed control of yourself. 13. Being a slave to desires, the hidden chains of modern life and the Stoic path to liberation. Desire, in its quiet whisper, sounds innocent. A small craving, a little indulgence, a harmless want. But the Stoics saw it for what it truly is. A seed that grows into slavery. When left unchecked, desire becomes not a choice, but a compulsion. And slowly, without noticing, you begin to serve it. You begin to build your day around it. You begin to justify lies for it. You bend your values, twist your time, and spend your peace
Just to satisfy it.
And here lies the great tragedy. You don't even know you're in chains. You think you're free because you chase what you want. But you're not chasing with power. You're chasing because you must. And that is not freedom. That is addiction in disguise. Epictetus warned us long ago. Freedom is not achieved by satisfying desire, but by eliminating it. Modern life wants you to forget that. It tells you to consume more, want more, need more. And that fulfillment is always just one purchase, one click, one orgasm, one compliment away. But the Stoics knew the truth. He who always needs more is never at peace. The man who chases pleasure endlessly will never rest, because desire, once fed, only grows hungrier. Today, it starts with something small, a craving for sugar, for distraction, for attention. Tomorrow, it's a dependence. And the day after that, it's a master you cannot escape. And so, Stoic practice begins here, in the disciplined refusal to be ruled. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. You don't have to satisfy every craving. You don't have to respond to every urge. You don't have to obey every impulse. You can observe it and let it pass. That's what real power looks like. Not indulgence, but restraint. The Stoics practiced what we now call voluntary discomfort. They went without. They slept on hard surfaces. They fasted. They trained themselves to realize, I do not need what I once thought I could not live without.
Why?
Because the man who can live with less owns himself. He cannot be bribed. He cannot be blackmailed by temptation. He cannot be bought with false pleasures. He is content with the present, and therefore, invincible. Seneca warned, it is not the man who is little, but he who desires more, that is poor. Think about your own life. What are you a slave to? Is it the validation of others? Is it the scrolling, the dopamine drip, the next hit of distraction? Is it lust, the constant hunger for bodies and fantasies? Is it luxury, the need to feel above others? Is it approval, the endless performance for applause? And ask yourself honestly, who would you be without that desire? Would you still be you? Or would you be more you? More free? More peaceful? More grounded? The Stoic does not renounce joy. He simply refuses to be possessed by it. He can enjoy wine without being drunk on it. He can love deeply without being shattered by loss. He can own wealth without being owned by it. He practices moderation, not as a punishment, but as a shield. Because moderation is not the absence of pleasure. It's the presence of clarity. It's knowing when enough is enough. And more importantly, when too much is too much. So if you want to reclaim your mind, your time, your soul, begin here. Question every desire. Where did it come from? Who planted it in you? Does it serve your peace or steal it? Then test yourself. Go without. Deny the urge. Sit with the craving. Watch it rise and fade. And each time you do, you become less of a servant and more of a sovereign. The Stoics did not want you to live without joy. They wanted you to live above it, to see pleasure for what it is, a passing thing, not a purpose. Because the man who has mastered his desires is no longer a slave. He is free. 14. Fearing solitude. The modern fear of being alone and the Stoic return to the self. In today's world, the idea of solitude is almost treated like a sickness. We are taught to fill every spare moment with noise. A podcast in the car, music in the shower, notifications at dinner, and a glowing screen in the dead of night. But beneath all of that noise is a silent fear most people cannot face. The fear of being alone with themselves. Not just physically alone, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually alone, with no one to entertain them, validate them, or distract them. And this is where the Stoic departs from the herd. The Stoic does not run from solitude. He walks into it, not as a punishment, but as a pilgrimage, because he knows. A man who cannot sit in silence with his own thoughts will never know who he truly is. Seneca once said, "The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today." You are arranging what lies in fortune's control and abandoning what lies in yours. And what lies in yours? Your attention. your presence, your relationship to your own soul. But solitude terrifies the ego, because in solitude, you can no longer hide behind roles. You're not a boss, or a husband, or a friend. You're just you, naked of titles, naked of applause, naked of distractions. And for most people, that's unbearable, because in that silence, the mind starts to speak. The unresolved pain rises, the fear surfaces, the regrets echo, the buried guilt knocks. But the Stoic doesn't fear that confrontation. He welcomes it, because only in solitude can you listen deeply and hear the parts of you that the world has drowned out. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "People seek retreats for themselves in the country, by the sea, in the mountains. But nowhere can a person find a retreat more peaceful and untroubled than in his own soul." That is what solitude is. A retreat, not a place to escape the world, but a place to reconnect with yourself. A place to remember what you value, what you believe, what matters to you when nobody is watching. It is where the false layers fall away, and what remains is real. The Stoics understood this. Solitude is not isolation. It is intimacy with your deepest thoughts, your truest values, and your real self. A man who does not cultivate solitude becomes addicted to external stimulation. He seeks others not out of love, but out of need. He cannot function without validation. He becomes needy, reactive, dependent. But a man who has faced his own silence, who has walked into solitude like a warrior into battle, emerges whole. He doesn't need attention. He doesn't fear loneliness. He doesn't chase distractions, because he has something most people don't: an anchored soul. Solitude becomes a sacred practice, a training ground for wisdom, a gym for the soul, a meditation in motion. You learn to observe your thoughts like clouds. You begin to see your patterns. You become familiar with your inner landscape. And most importantly, you start to build self-trust. Because when you stop running from yourself, you start standing with yourself. So if you fear solitude, ask yourself,
Why?
what are you afraid to meet in the silence? What have you buried beneath distraction? What part of yourself needs your attention, but only dares speak when the noise is gone? The Stoic seeks those answers. And he knows, until you are comfortable being alone, you will never be free. Because the man who is afraid of being alone will always be afraid of being himself. So return to solitude, not just once, but often, deliberately. Make it your temple, make it your training ground, and one day you will sit alone and feel not fear, but freedom, because you will know, in that silence, in that stillness, in that holy space of self, you are no longer lonely. You are finally home. 15. Avoiding effort, the fatal illusion that comfort will deliver you. There is a dangerous myth, whispered sweetly in the ear of every man who wants peace, but avoids the cost. The myth that you can grow without strain, that you can become strong without sacrifice, that you can rise in life without ever picking up weight. It is the most seductive lie of modernity, that effort is optional, that discipline is old-fashioned, that peace can be found in convenience and comfort. But the Stoics knew better. They understood, at a level most people today will never grasp, that peace is not the absence of hardship. It is the byproduct of a man who has learned to endure hardship with clarity and grace. There is no lasting tranquility without effort. There is no inner strength without deliberate struggle. There is no self-mastery without daily discipline. Because the universe does not reward intentions. It rewards labor. The Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, all agreed. The man who fears effort is not just weak, he is spiritually lost. Avoiding effort is not a neutral decision. It's a downward spiral. Every time you avoid doing what is difficult but necessary, you train your soul to quit. You reinforce a habit of spiritual retreat. You begin to rot, not on the surface, but from the core. Let that sink in. Avoiding effort is not just laziness. It is the slow erosion of your character. Because what you avoid begins to own you. The weight you refuse to lift becomes heavier. The conversations you run from grow louder. The habits you ignore tighten their grip. The goals you delay get further away, not just in distance, but in your belief that you're capable of reaching them. But what did the Stoics do when life got hard? They didn't shrink. They didn't pray for ease. They trained for it. They embraced hardship as a spiritual practice, a daily, repeated ritual of self-overcoming. Seneca practiced voluntary discomfort, sleeping without blankets, eating coarse food, walking in the cold.
Why?
To remind himself, I can survive anything. I am not ruled by comfort. My peace is internal, not external. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You must build up your life action by action, and be content if each one achieves its goal as far as it can." No one can stop you from that. It's not about perfection. It's about consistency. Because the man who does the hard thing every day, even if it's small, builds something that cannot be taken from him. Avoiding effort means avoiding evolution. And that's the real tragedy. You don't just remain the same. You get worse. Life is not still. It's either growth or decay. You're either sharpening your edge or letting it rust. The man who avoids effort wakes up one day surrounded by chaos, weakness, regret, and wonders why. It's because peace, resilience, self-respect were never found in the avoidance of discomfort. They are earned, one decision at a time, one act of courage at a time, one day of disciplined effort at a time. And here's what they don't tell you. Effort gets easier when you respect it, when you stop resenting the difficulty, when you stop whining about the process, when you stop fantasizing about results and start falling in love with the work.
Discipline becomes joy.
Pain becomes sacred. Growth becomes addictive. You begin to feel proud of yourself again, not because you're perfect, but because you showed up, even when it hurt, even when no one was watching, even when the world told you it was okay to quit. So, let's be brutally honest. If you want peace, but you refuse effort, you don't want peace. You want sedation. And sedation is not stillness. It is slow death. You were not built for passivity. You were not made to be comfortable all the time. You were made to be tempered like steel, forged in fire, sharpened by resistance, tested again and again until your soul shines. So embrace the path of effort. Embrace the hard days, the early mornings, the heavy lifting, not as punishment, but as initiation. Because peace is not what happens when everything goes your way. Peace is who you become. When you have suffered with purpose, struggled with integrity, and emerged on the other side unchained. You have walked through the fire now. You have faced the mirror, not the one that flatters your ego, but the one that reveals your chains. You've looked directly into the habits that hollow you out, the fears that keep your spirit small, the noise that deafens your inner voice, the distractions that rob you of strength, and the comforts that poison your soul. 15 obstacles, 15 illusions, 15 enemies of clarity, stillness, and inner power. And now comes the only question that matters.
What will you do about it?
Because the wisdom of the Stoics was never meant to decorate your mind. It was meant to pierce it, to break the falsehoods, to burn off the weakness, to forge a man who can stand alone in the storm. They did not teach to entertain, they taught to transform. They gave us mirrors, not masks. They gave us hammers, not handouts. They gave us silence, not slogans. And they left behind a single, unflinching truth. Peace is not passive. Strength is not optional. And stillness is not the reward of the lazy. It is earned.
Day by day.
Thought by thought. Decision by decision. You must stop chasing comfort and start cultivating character. You must stop praying for an easy life and start preparing for a meaningful one. Because everything you seek, peace, clarity, power, contentment, is not out there in the world. It is within. It has always been within. But you cannot reach it while clinging to what weakens you. You cannot hear it while drowning in noise. You cannot wield it while ruled by fear, desire, or distraction. So you must eliminate. You must let go. You must burn away the unnecessary with ruthless fire. Let go of constant complaining. It's a drug for the powerless. Let go of comparing yourself to others. It's a thief of your path. Let go of seeking everyone's approval. It's a slow death of your identity. Let go of fearing failure. It is the sculptor of your strength. Let go of grudges. They are anchors tied to corpses. Let go of fearing the future. It's not yours to control. Let go of clinging to the past. It's a weight tied to your wings. Let go of talking too much. Your soul is trying to speak. Let go of chasing external things. They disappear in the night. Let go of being emotionally reactive. It costs you your freedom. Let go of revenge. It makes you resemble what hurt you. Let go of worrying about what you can't control. It is madness disguised as responsibility. Let go of being a slave to desires. They are chains made of velvet. Let go of fearing solitude. It's where your true self waits. And let go of avoiding effort, because the only way to become who you were meant to be is to earn it. Stillness is not a retreat from life. It is your return to life.
To real life.
To the inner fortress where no insult, no loss, no fear, no circumstance can shake you. To the timeless space within where you are calm amid chaos, rooted amid winds, strong amid storms, and free even in chains. This is the path. This is the work. This is the Stoic way. And the world cannot take it from you, because the world did not give it to you. You build it. You become it. You live it. Silently.
Steadily.
Forever. And if you're ready to reclaim your inner strength, subscribe for more Stoic reflections like this. Until next time, stay grounded, stay clear, and above all, stay in command of your life.